The sky above the colony shimmered in red dust as the cargo shuttle came down. Jonas Reed stood on the landing pad, his coat flapping in the dry wind. It had been 6 months since he ordered a mail-order bride through the Galactic Companion program. The form said she was compatible, healthy, and loyal. He only wanted someone to share silence with, to cook a meal, to talk to after long work in the soil of Verelius 7th. But when the shuttle doors opened, silence turned into something else. She stepped out slowly, tall, thin, with silver-gray skin that caught the sun like liquid metal. Her eyes glowed faintly, not bright like fire, but soft like a storm hidden behind clouds. Jonas saw the bruise on her cheek first. It was dark purple spreading down to her jaw. Her clothes were not new. They were torn in places. The program had promised a companion, but the woman in front of him looked more like a survivor. Jonas took a step forward. You're Serah, right? She didn't answer. Her gaze darted to the guards leaving the shuttle. They ignored her completely as if she was cargo, not a person. One of them tossed a small case toward Jonas. Papers and translator, the guard muttered. She's your problem now. Then the ship rose again, engines burning orange, leaving dust and silence behind. Serah stood there, arms close to her body, trembling slightly. The thin collar around her neck blinked with a red light, slow, steady, alive. Jonas frowned. That's a tracker? She finally spoke, her voice quiet and melodic. Control, he blinked. Control? She nodded, touching the collar lightly. If I run, it hurts. Jonas felt something twist inside him. This wasn't what he signed up for. He wanted a partner, not a prisoner. But she looked so fragile, so lost, he couldn't send her away. He pointed toward his small farmhouse beyond the ridge. Come on, let's get you inside. She followed without a word. Her steps were light but cautious, like someone walking through a minefield. When they entered the house, she stopped near the window, watching the sky. Jonas poured water into a glass and handed it to her. She stared at it, unsure. It's just water, he said gently. She took a sip and flinched as if expecting poison. That night, the colony's power grid flickered. Jonas sat near the old radio, trying to ignore the strange feeling crawling in his chest. He could hear her moving softly in the next room. Every sound she made was careful, almost fearful. Outside, the wind howled. Then he heard it, a whisper, faint, in a language he didn't understand. It came from her room. Jonas stood at the doorway. She was kneeling by the window, the collar around her neck glowing brighter than before. Her eyes were closed, and she was whispering the same phrase again and again. Kaven Ra. He stepped closer. Serah. She gasped and turned, her eyes wide. The light from the collar pulsed faster, almost angry. She looked terrified. Don't speak, she said. They listen. Who listens? He asked, lowering his voice. She pointed toward the sky, and at that moment something flashed above the clouds. For a brief second, Jonas saw it, a shadowed shape like a ship hovering high in orbit. He froze. Is that? They follow me, she whispered. They never stop. The collar beeped once, sharp, cold, mechanical. Jonas rushed forward, grabbing the back of her neck. It's burning you. Her skin sizzled under the red glow. Jonas pulled the small tool from his belt and tried to loosen the clasp, but the metal was fused. Stay still, he said, voice shaking. A spark leapt from the collar, and both of them fell back. The red light went dark. For a moment, everything was silent again. Then a faint hum came from the radio, static rising and falling like breath. A voice broke through, alien and distant. Subject located. Prepare retrieval. Serah's silver eyes filled with tears. It's too late, she said softly. They found me. Jonas stared at her, at the broken collar, at the dark sky outside. He didn't know what he had just brought home, but it wasn't a bride. It was a war waiting to begin. The next morning came with a strange stillness. The desert wind outside Jonas's farmhouse was quiet for once, as if the whole planet was holding its breath. Jonas sat at the small kitchen table, staring at the burnt collar he had managed to pry off her neck during the night. It looked harmless now, just twisted metal and melted circuits, but the memory of that red light still made his chest tighten. Serah sat across from him, silent, her hands wrapped around a cup of warm water. She hadn't said a word since dawn. Her silver eyes kept drifting toward the window where the red sun was rising slowly. She looked like someone waiting for judgment. Jonas broke the silence. You said, "They follow you." Who are they? Her lips parted, but no sound came. Then softly she said, "Not safe." Words wake them. Who? Her eyes flicked toward the sky again. Jonas sighed and leaned back. You can stay here until we figure something out. I don't care what the company wants. No one's going to hurt you. Her gaze snapped to him, confused, almost disbelieving. Then she nodded once and whispered, "Thank you." Over the next few hours, she explored the house like a ghost. She moved quietly, touching things with curiosity. The old wooden furniture, the dusty books, the framed photo of Jonas's parents. When she found a small music box on a shelf, she turned the crank slowly. The sound of soft, human, nostalgic filled the room. Her face softened. This song, it's sad, Jonas smiled faintly. Yeah, my mother used to play it. Reminded her of home. Home, she repeated as if testing the word on her tongue. Then she looked at him. Do you miss it? Every day, he admitted. She nodded. Then we are the same. That night, while Jonas checked the power grid, the old radio crackled again. He froze. Sector 4, searching for escaped property. Description, Varelian female. Height 1.9 meters. Approach with caution. Jonas's stomach dropped. He rushed to the window. In the distance, above the dunes, a patrol drone glided across the sky, its searchlight sweeping over the colony. He ran to her room. Serah, we need to hide. She looked up, calm but alert. They found the signal. What signal? The collar, she said. Even broken, it speaks. Jonas grabbed his coat. Come on. He led her to the old storage cellar beneath the floorboards. It was cold and dark, filled with old tools and crates. She crouched inside without complaint. He closed the hatch just as the drone's light passed over the house. The sound of its engines grew louder. A mechanical voice echoed outside. Scan initiated. Human property inspection. Jonas forced himself to stand still as blue light scanned through the windows. He could feel his heartbeat in his throat. The drone paused, hovering near the door, then drifted away. Only when the hum disappeared into the distance did he open the hatch again. Serah climbed out slowly. You risk much, she said. Why? Jonas looked at her. At the faint scars along her arms, the way her eyes searched his face not for pity but for truth. Because you're not property. You're a person, and no one deserves to live like that. Something changed in her expression, a crack in the wall she had built around herself. For the first time she smiled, barely noticeable but real. Then I will help you too. How? Jonas asked. She lifted her hand. A faint blue shimmer appeared above her palm, a projection of strange symbols spinning slowly. I was born in a royal house, she said softly. I know secrets that can break empires. Jonas blinked. Royal house? Serah's voice lowered. The collar wasn't to keep me from escaping. It was to keep me from remembering who I am. The symbols shifted, forming the image of a large battleship orbiting the planet. Its emblem marked with the same blinking red light that had once burned her neck. Jonas stared, speechless. They're here already, aren't they? She met his eyes. Yes, and they don't just want me back. They want to erase the one human who freed me. Outside, a distant thunder rolled across the desert, not from a storm, but from engines entering the atmosphere. The hunt had begun. The ground trembled before dawn. Jonas woke to the sound of something distant, not thunder, but engines. Heavy, metallic, deliberate, the kind that didn't belong to this quiet colony world. He ran outside barefoot, heart pounding. Above the orange horizon he saw it, a glimmering shape breaking through the upper clouds. Not one ship, 3. They were descending fast. Inside the house, Serah was already awake. Her silver eyes glowed faintly in the half-light. She was clutching the broken collar in her hands. They found it, she said quietly. Jonas frowned. What do you mean? It's dead, she shook her head. No, the core still speaks when touched. It's not just a tracker. It's a beacon. Before Jonas could reply, the collar beeped once, sharp and cold. A pulse of blue light rippled through the room, passing through walls, through the air, through the planet's dust like a silent scream. Serah closed her eyes. They've locked on. Jonas grabbed his pack and pulled her toward the back door. Then we're leaving. They ran out into the desert, the red wind slicing across their faces. Behind them, The first ship began to lower toward the colony, engines roaring. Dust spiraled high into the sky. Jonas could see small figures dropping from its belly, soldiers in dark armor scanning with glowing visors. He and Serah ducked behind a ridge, breath heavy. "We have to get off this world," he muttered. "There's nowhere to go," Serah said, voice trembling. "Every port will have my image. Every gate will scan for me. Then we go somewhere they won't look," Jonas said. "The canyon. The signal's too weak there." They ran again, hours through the endless dunes until the world turned to cliffs and shadow. When they reached a small cave carved by old windstorms, Jonas finally stopped. His lungs burned. Serah stood beside him, staring at the sky through the crack in the stone. "Who are they?" he asked finally. Her silence stretched long. Then she whispered, "They are my people." Jonas stared at her. "Your people. I am Serah Kai of the Virelian House of Hearts. My family ruled half the system before the Great Division. When I refused to marry the warlord of the Western Moons, they sold me instead, through human merchants. It was easier to call it a marriage program than to call it what it was." Jonas's breath caught. "You were sold by your own world?" She looked away. "Yes, and your kind paid for me." The words hit him harder than the wind outside. He sat down slowly, his mind spinning. "I didn't know." "I swear on I believe you," she said softly. "You freed me when others only saw a price." Jonas met her gaze, the flicker of pain behind it. "Then let's keep you free." She turned toward the cave wall and traced glowing symbols across the rock with her fingertip. A hologram appeared, a rotating map of nearby systems. Lines connected planets like veins pulsing red. "This is their network," she said. "The callers, the ships, the buyers, all part of a trade route. If they catch me, they erase every trace of it." Jonas studied the map. "If we break that route, they lose control." Serah nodded slowly. "But the only way is to reach the relay tower. It can send this data to every colony. If the truth spreads, they can't silence it." A low hum echoed outside the cave, a lot closer now. The red dust shimmered with light. Jonas grabbed his rifle. "We're out of time." A drone hovered at the cave entrance, its sensors locking on. Jonas fired once. Sparks burst. The drone exploded, showering fragments across the sand. From above, a voice boomed through an amplifier. "Human, you are harboring stolen property. Surrender the Virelian fugitive and you may live." Jonas clenched his jaw. "Stolen property," he muttered. "They talk like she's furniture." He turned to Serah. "How far to that tower?" 3 hours, she said. "If we survive the next 10 minutes. Outside, boots hit the ground. Dozens of them." Jonas reloaded his weapon. "Then we make them earn it." Serah's hands glowed as she summoned a field of light, a shimmer of energy that wrapped the cave entrance like liquid glass. "They trained me to be a bride," she said coldly. "But I was born a fighter." Jonas smirked despite the fear. "Then let's remind them what happens when they underestimate a human and a runaway queen." The soldiers' lights closed in, their shadows long across the sand. The first shot cracked the air, and the desert woke to war. Smoke drifted across the horizon. The air smelled of metal and ozone, the scent of burned engines and shattered drones. Jonas stood outside the cave, rifle hanging loosely in his hands. His ears still rang from the firefight. The dunes were littered with blackened fragments, the remains of the soldiers who had come for her. Serah sat near the rocks, her palms glowing faintly as she pressed them to a wound on her side. The energy pulsed, sealing the torn skin slowly. Her breathing was steady, but her eyes were distant, fixed on something only she could see. Jonas crouched beside her. "They won't stop, will they?" She shook her head. "Not while I'm alive. Not while the truth exists." Before he could answer, a static burst came from the cave, from the broken comm array he'd salvaged days ago. The device hissed, then spoke. "Jonas Reed, civilian of Virelia 7th. This is Commander Roth of the Virelian Peace Corps. We request a private communication." Jonas exchanged a glance with Serah. "Peace Corps? Is that real?" She frowned. "No, that's their military front, Roth. He was my father's enforcer." Jonas hesitated, then pressed the receiver. "I'm listening." A deep, calm voice filled the small space. "Jonas Reed, we acknowledge your courage. You protected a fugitive at great risk to yourself, but you've been misled. The woman with you is dangerous, a rogue element who threatens both our species." Jonas looked at Serah. Her expression didn't change, but her fists tightened. Roth continued, his tone almost gentle. Surrender her, and you will be granted safe passage to Earth. You'll be compensated. No charges. No questions. Jonas stared at the comm. You mean sell her back? Correct. Return her to rightful custody. This is your only chance. Jonas took a deep breath. His voice was calm but sharp. Tell me, Commander, if she's so dangerous, why does she have bruises? Why was she sold through a human marriage catalog? There was a pause, a long, cold pause. Then Roth spoke again, voice like glass. You've seen too much. The line cut. Serah stood up slowly, her energy dimming. He knows you won't trade me. Now he'll burn everything around us until there's nothing left. Jonas looked at her. Then we hit him first, she blinked. How? He pointed toward the eastern ridge. There's a human outpost 10 clicks from here. Communications relay. If Roth's using human networks to track us, that's where he's routing signals. Serah tilted her head. You plan to attack your own kind? Jonas's jaw tightened. If they're selling people, they stopped being my kind. They left before sunrise. The wind carried thin dust trails behind them as they moved across the wasteland. Jonas rode the old hauler he'd rebuilt years ago, its engine growling softly. Serah sat behind him, silent, the map projection flickering faintly between them. When they reached the ridge, Jonas saw it, the outpost rising from the sand like a scar, towers covered in antennas and holographic banners. Galactic Companion Program, Human Alliance approved. His stomach turned. That's the same company I used. Serah touched the side of his arm. You didn't know, but the guilt crawled up his spine anyway. He remembered the glossy brochures, the promises of connection across the stars. He thought he'd been lonely, but he had fed a machine that turned living beings into property. They crept closer under the cover of darkness. Guards stood outside, human soldiers in polished armor. Jonas whispered, They're protecting the trade. Serah's eyes glimmered. Then they're no different from Roth. Jonas drew his rifle. Let's crash their signal. The first shot came from Serah. A beam of pale light cut through the guard's weapon, melting it in his hands. Jonas followed with a burst of plasma, striking the tower's sensor array. Sirens screamed. They stormed the control room together. Dust, light, chaos. Inside, rows of consoles flickered with holographic profiles. Names, species, ages. Thousands of them, all marked as matched, all sold. Jonas felt sick. God, no, it's not just aliens. They're trading humans, too. Serah's voice broke softly. Slavery, disguised as love. She pulled a data crystal from her wrist and slotted it into the main terminal. The screens glowed bright blue. I can copy their files. Proof of every sale, every payment. Once we reach the desert tower, we send it to every world. Will Roth try to stop it? Jonas asked. Her silver eyes turned toward the sky, where dark shapes were beginning to descend again. He'll try, but this time he won't find a frightened bride. Jonas gripped his weapon and stood beside her. Then let's give the commander something to remember. As the first missile hit the outpost, their reflections flashed in the console light. A human farmer and an alien heir, bound not by contract but by rebellion. Outside, the desert erupted with fire, and somewhere above the clouds Commander Roth smiled. Let the hunt begin. The outpost burned through the night. Flames painted the sand in streaks of orange and blue, and every explosion echoed like a heartbeat beneath the alien stars. Jonas stood in the control room, staring at the chaos of data racing across the cracked holographic screen. Names, serial codes, transaction numbers. Each line was a life sold, shipped, or erased. Serah worked beside him, her fingers dancing over the console's light keys. Her expression was calm, but her eyes, glowing with faint silver fire, betrayed fury. They hid it well, she murmured. Encrypted under trade routes and agricultural contracts. Jonas frowned. Agriculture? Your colonies needed supplies, she said. They paid with slaves. My people called it diplomacy. Your people called it profit. The words cut deep. Jonas wanted to defend humanity, to say not everyone knew that most people were just trying to survive. But what excuse could clean this? He looked around the room again. Thousands of profiles hovered in blue light, alien and human faces alike, all stamped with barcodes. Serah touched the screen. Look here. She opened one file. A small girl with violet skin appeared. Age 9. Sold as domestic companion. She was shipped to Earth 6 months ago. Jonas clenched his fists. Monsters. No, Serah said quietly. Businessmen. Outside thunder rolled again. Not from weather, from ships descending. Jonas could see faint lights cutting through the clouds. They found us again. Serah didn't look up. Let them come. We have what we need. She pulled a small shard from a hidden slot on her forearm, a crystalline drive glowing with pale blue light. This holds every transaction, every shipment, every name. Once it's sent, there's no turning back. Jonas grabbed his rifle. Then we get it out of here. Serah shook her head. The outpost relays are destroyed. We need the old desert tower. It's the only one left unregistered by the program. Jonas exhaled. That's a 2-hour ride through open dunes. She met his gaze. Then we ride fast. They left before the horizon turned gold. The twin moons faded behind them as they sped through the wasteland on the battered hauler, its engine coughing against the rising heat. Serah sat behind Jonas, scanning the skies through a cracked visor. The ship lights grew smaller behind them, but never vanished. Roth won't stop, she said over the wind. He'll burn this world to ash before letting the truth spread. Jonas kept his eyes on the horizon. Then we'll burn his lies first. She smiled faintly, the first real smile he'd seen from her. You talk like a soldier. He shook his head. Just a farmer who's tired of being quiet. By the time they reached the old relay tower, the sun was a blazing wound above the desert. The tower leaned slightly, half buried by sand, its solar fins broken and rusted. Jonas approached the control panel, brushing away dust. The system flickered weakly to life. Serah placed the data crystal into the port. Once it links with the network, the information will broadcast to every open frequency in human and Varelian space. Jonas nodded. And what happens after that? She looked at him, a quiet sadness in her voice. War, but also truth. He opened his mouth to reply, but a voice echoed from the comm channel. Clear, mocking, familiar. Still running, Serah Kai? Still hiding behind a human? Roth, Serah's expression hardened. He tracks through the relay frequencies. He knows where we are. Jonas checked the radar. 3 ships, close, we have 5 minutes, she said. I can finish the upload before they reach us. Then do it, Jonas said, gripping his rifle. As Serah typed in the final sequence, a deep rumble shook the tower. The ground split open nearby as plasma fire hit the sand. Jonas returned fire, the recoil slamming into his shoulder. The air burned. Inside the tower, alarms wailed as the signal powered up. Transmission 43%, the console read. Serah stayed at the terminal, hands glowing with energy as she shielded the interface from incoming blasts. Don't let them through! Jonas stood in the doorway, firing again and again, cutting down advancing soldiers. He didn't notice the cut on his cheek, the heat on his arm, only the sound of her voice behind him, calm and fierce. Transmission 89%. Then, silence. The firing stopped. Jonas turned and froze. Serah stood straight, her hands on the console, light streaming from her palms. It's done, she whispered. On the screen, a new message appeared. Data uploaded to all systems. Jonas stepped closer. We did it? She nodded weakly. Yes, now everyone will know. Outside, the sky turned black with ships, human and Varelian both, converging. The truth had escaped, but the war it carried was only beginning. Jonas reached out, gripping her hand. Whatever comes next, he said quietly. We face it together. Serah looked up at him, bruised, scarred, but alive, and said, Together, then. Above them, the first missiles fell, and the horizon lit up like a second sunrise. The desert had turned to glass. Where the old relay tower stood, the sand shimmered from the heat of plasma fire. The sky burned red, streaked with ships locking into battle. Jonas crouched behind the wreckage of the hauler, dust sticking to the sweat on his face. Every breath tasted like ash. Serah was at the base of the tower, one hand pressed against the glowing console. Her silver eyes reflected the storm above, a storm she had started. The transmission was done, but now every faction that had been exposed wanted revenge. Human security drones, Varelian warships, private mercenaries, all fighting each other in a desert that used to be silent. Jonas reloaded his rifle and shouted over the roar. The signal still holding? Serah nodded. It's being mirrored across 50 colonies. They can't erase it now. Good, Jonas said, firing into the dunes. Then we buy it time. A squad of armored soldiers charged over the ridge. Jonas dropped two before the others ducked for cover. The air shimmered as Serah raised her arm. Light flared from her palm, forming a shield of pure energy that rippled like liquid glass. Plasma bolts struck it, bending harmlessly away. Jonas whistled. You've been holding out on me, she smiled faintly. Royal training has its uses. The ground shook as another explosion ripped through the horizon. From the smoke, a larger shape appeared. A Varelian assault crawler, all black armor and spinning cannons. It rolled toward the tower, cutting through human soldiers like insects. Serah's voice was calm, too calm. Roth has arrived, Jonas glanced at her. You can tell? He built those machines. Only he uses them in sand terrain. As if summoned, a voice echoed from the crawler's speakers, smooth, commanding. Jonas Reed. You think you've done something noble. You've doomed billions instead. The alliance is over. You've started a war neither side can win. Jonas shouted back. Then maybe they shouldn't have sold people like cattle. Roth's laughter rolled across the dunes, cold and hollow. People don't care about truth, human. They care about comfort. And I'm going to bury yours under this desert. The crawler's cannons charged, a low, vibrating hum building into a scream. Jonas dove, pulling Serah with him as the tower's base exploded. The impact threw them both across the sand. Jonas hit the ground hard, pain flashing white through his shoulder. He tried to stand. Couldn't. His body felt heavy. Smoke filled the air. Serah crawled toward him, coughing. Her skin glowed faintly, veins lit with silver light. Stay down, she said. You've done enough, Jonas forced a weak smile. Not really my thing. The crawler loomed closer, its shadow swallowing them both. Roth's voice came again, quieter now. You could have lived rich, Reed, but you chose a ghost fight. Serah stood slowly. The silver glow in her eyes turned bright, brighter than the sun above. She raised both hands, palms open. Roth's tone changed. Serah, don't, she ignored him. You called me property. You chained me. You killed my name. Now watch the price of your mistake. The ground around the tower cracked. Light erupted from the fissures, went silver lines burning through the sand, spreading like veins of fire. The crawler's sensors screamed. Jonas shielded his eyes. Serah, what are you doing? Ending their signal, she said softly. But it'll take mine too. Before he could stop her, she unleashed the energy. The blast hit like a tidal wave, soundless, pure. The crawler disintegrated in seconds, melting into molten metal. The shockwave flattened every drone in sight. When the light faded, Serah was on her knees. The glow was gone. Her breathing was shallow. Jonas stumbled toward her. Hey, stay with me. She smiled weakly. The signal's safe. They can't undo it now. He knelt beside her, pulling her close. You didn't have to. Yes, I did, she whispered. Freedom isn't free, Jonas, it never was. He held her as the sun began to rise again. A new dawn over a dead battlefield. Ships circled above, but none fired. For the first time, the war paused, as if the universe itself had gone silent to witness the moment. Serah's fingers tightened around his hand. Promise me one thing. Jonas nodded. Anything. Don't let them write the story without us, he swallowed hard. I won't. Her eyes flickered once more. Silver and soft, then closed. Jonas looked to the sky, where the last echoes of her light shimmered in the cloud. Not gone, but carried. He stood, gripping his rifle. The tower burning behind him. They wanted war, he murmured. Now they'll get justice. And with that, Jonas Reed, farmer, husband, fugitive, walked alone into the desert dawn, where legends begin. The war began at sunrise. News of the transmission swept through the galaxy faster than any fleet. Every world, human and Varelian alike, received the same message, a flood of faces, names, and contracts, proof of years of slavery hidden behind peaceful trade. Screens flickered in marketplaces, ship decks, and royal halls. The illusion of harmony shattered like glass. Jonas Reed watched it unfold from the cliffs above the desert. What was left of the relay tower still burned below him, a skeleton of metal and sand. He had buried Serah at dawn, beneath the only patch of green that grew on Varelia 7th, a single stubborn vine that refused to die in the desert. He had no words left when he covered her body. Just silence, and a vow that clung to his chest like armor. They'll never silence her again. By the third day, the fighting began. The Varelian Empire fractured, half of it demanding freedom, the other half calling Serah's rebellion treason. Human governments panicked as citizens rioted, accusing their leaders of lies and corruption. Every ship became a message board, every colony a battlefield of truth versus power. Jonas moved through it like a ghost. He joined a small resistance cell made up of both species, mechanics, pilots, traders, and former soldiers. None trusted him at first. The story of the human who stole a Varelian princess had spread like wildfire, twisted and exaggerated. But when they learned he carried her last data logs, they listened. Those logs contained more than just trade secrets. They contained Serah's final message, a speech recorded before she unleashed her power at the tower. Her voice played one night as the group huddled in a dark cave, the sound soft but unbreakable. To every world that bought comfort with someone else's freedom, this is your mirror. Look into it and choose what you are. You can destroy me, but you can't unhear the truth. The rebels fell silent. Jonas didn't speak. He just looked at the horizon, endless, red and waiting. Weeks passed. Skirmishes turned into battles. Battles turned into sieges. Jonas led missions to destroy data hubs still controlling the old collar systems. Every time he fired, he remembered Serah's words. Freedom isn't free. One night, after a long fight near the ruins of the human Varelian trade hub, Jonas sat alone beside a broken transmitter. His hands were stained with dust and blood. The stars above flickered with the light of war, not twinkling but burning. A voice crackled from the comm unit beside him. Jonas Reed, it said, formal and heavy. This is Commander Roth. Jonas froze. You're supposed to be dead. Roth chuckled weakly. Supposed to be. You did more damage than you know. Both our governments are in pieces. Congratulations. You've built your martyr. Jonas's jaw tightened. Serah wasn't a martyr. She was a person. You turned her into a weapon. She turned herself into one, Roth said. And so did you. There was a long pause. Then Roth's tone softened. But maybe you were right. Maybe the lies needed to burn. Maybe peace built on slavery isn't peace at all. Jonas stared at the horizon. Then stop fighting. Roth sighed. It's too late for that, but perhaps it's not too late for you. Static filled the line, then silence. Jonas didn't respond. He crushed the comm beneath his boot and stood. Months later, the galaxy changed. A new council formed, part human, part Varelian, part of every species that had once been bought or sold. They named it the Pact of Serah Kai. Jonas was invited to stand with them at the signing ceremony, but he refused. He didn't need recognition. He just wanted peace to mean something again. He returned to Virelia 7, to the place where the war had started. The desert was quiet now. The relay tower's ruins stood like a monument, half melted but proud. Jonas knelt by Serah's grave, brushing the dust away. You did it, he whispered. They remember your name. The vine had grown stronger, curling around a piece of her old silver bracelet. Jonas smiled faintly. I kept my promise, he said. They won't write the story without you. The wind carried his words into the endless sky. Above, the stars no longer burned with war. They shimmered softly, alive again. Jonas rose, shoulders heavy but steady. He looked at the horizon, a faint light breaking over the dunes. She freed a galaxy, he murmured. I'll make sure it stays free. Then he walked into the sunrise, his shadow long behind him, the last witness of a war born from love, and a vow that would outlive them both.